We join Varymyr while he's running with his wolves, and he comes on a group of wildlings and kills them and eats them, which results in him thinking of the taboos of warging, which are you can't eat human meat as a warg, you can't mate with a wolf as a warg, and you can't warg into another human being. Um, and we also find that Varymyr escaped from the battle beneath the wall, but he's now dying because he was stabbed while looting a dead woman. Um, Most of the wildlings have scattered without Mance's leadership, and Varymyr thinks of how he went mad after Melisandre burned the eagle. Basically, the eagle burned inside out. So we definitely see some of Melisandre's power here. Varymyr also remembers how his parents found out that he was a warg and dumped him at Hagons, who taught him how to be a warg and a skin changer. Where Varymyr also tells us that wargs are feared even beyond the wall. Now that he's certain he's dying, he tries to warg into Thistle, this spear woman who's taking care of him, but she goes mad and tries to kill herself. As Varymyr dies, he wargs into One Eye, the leader of the pack of wolves, while Thistle rises again as a wight and sees him, but it's not really explained how she sees him. Okay, so the interesting thing here is Varymyr notes that Jon is a very strong warg. And I just want to say that if I ever had to give my children milk names, I would never name them Bump and Lump.
Yeah, that was definitely unfortunate for Varymyr.
And what kind of parent does that?
I can understand why he had some issues growing up for sure, and I think that definitely shows up in this passage.
Well, it's the little sister, isn't it? Who names it Bump because it's like the pregnant mother.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
But he was the first one, right? So who was calling him Lump?
Well, they call him the name. They don't name him for a couple of years. I think that because they can't name him for 2 years, or they might it's bad luck or something.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. But you can find better milk names. I mean, Monster is fine, right? Monster is better than Lump.
So, do we want to talk about how this relates to potentially Jon as we leave him at the end of Dance, and how the reason this prologue even exists might be because it shows us that wargs are capable of living on in the animals they warg into? Or do we want to leave that to Jon?
I think that's probably the only reason why we've seen Varymyr as a POV.
Right. That's the impression I got, and I think that's the most obvious reason why we get this insight into him. But do you guys think there's something to that?
There's also another thing. It's basically Varymyr explains what's forbidden even for a warg, and I just noticed that Bran has already done 2 of those things.
Right.
He's eaten human meat while he was inhabiting Summer, and he's also walked into Hodor. So,
which is interesting, and I wonder if there'll be consequences for Bran in terms of where he ends up if he becomes sort of dehumanized because he's doing more sort of taboo stuff when he's warged. But yeah, I mean, this chapter exists just solely in the context of Jon, so I guess we can discuss the implications of what happened to Jon when we get to him later, maybe.
I think it also emphasizes how powerful Bran is, that he can so easily warg into a human being, that this advanced skin changer can't do it.
That's true.
But Hodor is simple-minded, right? So I'm sure that makes it easier.
Yeah, that's true.
He probably doesn't fight back as much.
That's maybe baby steps, so starting off with Hodor, but then eventually as he grows older and adjusts to his powers, he could maybe warg into someone else.
I mean, this was Varymyr's first attempt, which is probably why it didn't work.
Right, I think it's fair to say that Bran already has gone further than most wargs that we are at least aware of have gone before. I guess the question is where he goes from there. But one of the other things I thought was interesting about this chapter, purely just from the way it was written, was giving that perspective of the wildlings that we really haven't seen yet, and seeing the state of where they're at after Stannis obviously smashed their assault on the wall. And I thought that was a cool way to introduce the state of affairs on the wall after being removed from it from so long because of a Feast for Crows and the fact that there was no interaction there. And I think that was a cool way to get a sense of where things were at.
It also continues that pattern of the wall being a focus of the prologue, on the first, the third, and the fifth book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was aware of the consistent theme of there always being a magical element in every prologue, but that's a good point too.
What do we think of the final line? She sees me.
Yeah, good point. What are the crackpot theories that
Whites, I think they remember something from their lives, because remember when the Whites came for the Lord Commander, Mormont, they remember that he was the Lord Commander, and they remember that he was the one they wanted to kill. So I'm assuming this just means that she has some memory left, and she knows there was Varymyr who drove her mad. I'm just assuming.
I couldn't begin to guess what it would be, but I guess what would be the possible implications of the fact that Whites might actually retain some form of memory? Would that be further proof that potentially Cold Hands is Benjen or something like that? Or is he a completely different class of White and can't really be categorized that same way? And also, could it be that that the Whites, that there could be some kind of reversal and they could potentially become allies if they're truly capable of actual thought?
It's possible. We just don't know enough about the others and Whites just yet. I mean, we haven't seen enough of them so far.
That is true. Yeah, I always think it's interesting when George writes these chapters that don't really so much feed into the plot. They're kind of almost ancillary to the story itself, and I think that at those times he kind of opens up some of his writing skill because he's not so married to how the plot should run, so to speak, and I like that. I like seeing that from time to time.
Yeah, and you see his strength as a short story writer. They're sort of so self-contained.